Bapak was like the sunrise. Well, it was a natural phenomena. You don't ask whether the sun's going to rise. You don't ask whether it's going to be a cold or a wet day. It is a cold or a wet day, and Bapak was Bapak. Yeah. And there was nothing you could get hold of to form a criticism, because all Bapak said was, trust God and submit.
I was thinking, well, this man isn't saying anything that isn't in all the holy books. What is it? And yet it was as if the entire universe was coming out of this man's mouth. I mean, it was quite dazzling.
Anything that Bapak said which touched on spirituality was a gift, you know. And so his talks, he went around the world, and he would come to Bristol or Manchester or London and give these extraordinary talks. And you couldn't understand what he was saying. I mean, the first translators were not very good at it because they were Indonesians. And a lot of us went to sleep during the talks. And Bapak said, don't worry, because what I'm saying will somehow come through. And it did. It did in an extraordinary way.
He launched the bank at the 71 Congress, which was the first time I was officially interpreting for him. And then the following year, which was my first round-the-world trip with Bapa, 72, really he subordinated everything to getting the bank off the ground. You remember, so everywhere we went, they'd give a talk and latihan, and then people would have to come up and sign the book, you know. You remember that? You know, everybody. I mean, nobody ever, you know, I don't know what the SEC would say, but, you know, nobody ever launched a bank like that before.
Bapak started talking about enterprises, and quite in early days, and he said, we've got to get money so that we can have places to do the latihan, and we've got to have an organisation so that we can make decisions. And so the secretariat group rose, and so you got this division between helpers and committee, and the committee had to provide a hall and had to make sure that people paid their dues, because you had a secretary and a treasurer, and it was like any other British organisation. And various people undertook these jobs and in the early days did them. So a good group did actually have a helpers group and a committee.
Bapa talked to us about enterprises. He gave the example by starting the Widjoyo, by starting an international bank, by starting a hotel, by wanting to start, which didn't succeed, but huge sugar factories and refineries in Indonesia, as well as palm and so on. Bapa was expanding. He wanted Subud to expand not only on the inner and the material, on the spiritual, but he wanted to really Subud to expand equally on the material. That is, if you're going to develop yourself, what is the use of all being spiritual and starving? His point was, you know, you develop in the spiritual, and it should follow with material.
A lot of people in Subud at that time didn't like this business of the material world creeping in. They thought, all we want is our latihan and spiritual enlightenment. All this talk of money and enterprise is we actually had a national helper who openly disagreed at our national helpers meetings with Bapak's business of, he said, you can't take money from the devil to do the work of God. And there were quite a few people at the time who had this feeling.
We were the first to start enterprises, and my little enterprise went very well. In Tunbridge Wells, we developed it, and I started to have accountants like Sachlan Fraval and others, and Lambert Coles was a terrific help and helped me to develop the enterprise. and acquire a lot of experience in the business line. The whole thing was very exciting and a very positive adventure. It was a kind of, that enterprise became a kind of stronghold as well, and the group developed around it in Tunbridge Wells, and it was very positive. And then the Lambert Gibbs down the road opened his business of architecture, and later on Michael Lloyd and Malcolm Wildsmith, and we had a real wonderful, active families and team of Subud members in Tunbridge Wells. It was, everybody supported everybody else, and it was a very exciting time.
And then Nugroho came up. Lambert went to the Toronto Congress, and on the night before, or one night, it was during Ramadan and so on, and one night in his room on his own, he heard the words, and I've never known him have this kind of experience before: "You have to build an international centre for Subud in Britain before you die." And he felt he'd better tell Sharif, and Sharif told Babak, and Babak said, "Yes, yes." And when he closed the Congress, he said, "The next Congress is going to be in Britain, in our own international centre."
Baba saw the true need, but we were not able to guide it in the right way, because it was, the passions got involved and it went towards the rocks, and we ended up with a huge battleship of Anugraha on the rocks. I was myself at one time, when things were going bad, they thought they need somebody who everybody knows and trusts and so on, and Leonard could do this well. We must take him on the board. And I had a little bit of experience with my business and so on. So I went on the board, but I realized soon realized how difficult it was going to be. There were what we thought experts in our brotherhood, you know, financiers and so on. I won't mention any names, there's no use, but actually all our experts were really not experts. And it was very difficult to handle this this large enterprise. It was difficult because we rapidly were too ambitious. We wanted to have an international conference center. We would have been one of the first international center to be able to have international conferences without the people present. We had the ambition of making a rising floor, which was very, very nice, but a little bit advanced as well. We had the ambition to make the whole place go dark in daytime by using a most amazing chemical panels that you would put in the dome at the top, and when the sunlight came on them, they would darken at will, and so on and so forth. There was lots of wonderful ideas, but they certainly came from the NAFs in the sense that they were passionate but not reasonable.
It was very strange, and of course heartbreaking, because we didn't all concertedly have the tenacity of purpose to stem that energy, that negative energy. So it was very sad for me, I must say. It's very sad, because I'm quite sure we were supposed to.
There were all kinds of opportunities which we couldn't grasp. But that's not to say they weren't valuable to the participants. They really were valuable. They showed all of my colleagues something which was precious. And okay, we made a mess of it from the point of view financially. But there was a prize, a prize which we each, to some extent, are able to use.
I understood very clearly why our big enterprises didn't work out. It's because we were growing. We were growing with it, and I think a lot of us learned. But it was one of the problems, was that too much of the heart and not enough of the mind, clarity of the mind. Yeah. So that was the development in that period of time. It was a very, very exciting time.